All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us and welcome to this webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I am marketing operations here at Smarty. Today's webinar, titled Why Do I Need International Address Validation? It should be an exciting and informative one. We're very excited to get started. However, before I introduce our presenter, let me go over just a couple housekeeping items. Number one, this webinar is being recorded. It's being recorded right now. We will send a copy of it out to everyone who registered. So if you need to step out early, or maybe you'll even want to forward this on to someone that you think would value this information, you'll receive that in your email inbox hopefully later today. Second, to interact with our presenter and other audience members and other panelists, feel free to use the chat and the Q&A features inside the Zoom webinar interface. We've got people in the wings that are ready to take your questions, and of course I'll bring some of these questions up to our presenter at the end, or throughout if it's pertinent. So speaking of our presenter, today we have Jeffrey Duncan, Technical Product Manager, with us, and we're very excited to hear what he has to say. So without further ado, Jeffrey, the time is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So as was mentioned, please put your questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. If there's lots of questions, this could go long. If there's no questions at all, it could go really quick. Let's get started. Why do I need international address validation? First off, it's difficult. International addresses are hard. I was raised in Germany, and just one difference, German addresses have the street name first and then the house number second. Okay, and they don't use a state, they just use the city and the postal code. So a German address would be Heinekener Straße, number 10, Berlin, and then a postal code. That's dramatically different than the United States, which has the house number first and then the street and a city, state, and a postal code. But it's not just those two. You have Japanese addresses, which if a Japanese address is written in kanji, in a native character set, then the postal code comes first. It goes from the largest piece of data down to the smallest. The house number is last. Whereas when you jump to Spain, the house number comes first, so the smallest piece of information comes first, and then it goes up to the largest, which is the postal code at the end, or the province at the end. So international address validation or international addressing is difficult. Smarty Streets, or Smarty, we've changed our name and I haven't gotten used to it yet, takes care of that for you. So different countries have different address formats. Man, my head spins when I try to think of all the different address formats. There's a lot of them. Of the 240 countries, there are probably 30 different address formats, and then there's nuances for each country. Yeah, so it's complicated, and address formats change on occasion. When you look over in some of the Eurasian countries, you get new countries that are formed, and there was no address format, so they'll pick one. We keep track of that. I also had a friend that pointed out to me something that was obvious. Your customers, in fact, don't always put addresses in the right format, and sometimes the same customer will put an address in differently. Let's go to the US, just a simple address, 100 Main Street, New York, New York. A customer might put the address in 100 Main, and they could drop the street. They might think that it's Main Road. They might think that it's Main Parkway, and then they misspell the parkway. Customers don't always get the address right. And then when they're putting in their secondary information, like an apartment, they could just put 100. And in order to have information or data that you can work with, you've got to validate it. Another one, languages. When I speak German and Spanish and English, I don't speak any languages that don't use a Latin character set. When I see an address in Japan, in kanji, or in a native character set that's other than Latin, I have to immediately jump on Smarty to figure out what even are the components of this. What is the city? I have no idea. It just looks like squiggly lines. What's the state? Oh, that's the street. Cool. So if it's important for you to understand that what that an address is going to work for you, or if it's not even an address, it could just be a phrase, that's where Smarty can come in. So we handle all of that so that you don't have to. Oh, wait. Now let's hit it here. What is international address validation? I'm going to speak specifically about address validation. International just takes that to another level. So Smarty began as a US address validation service. And then we expanded internationally. It was really good because we got accustomed to this challenging process of verifying and validating addresses. What does that even mean? Very simply, we take an address that you give us and we clean it up so that it makes sense. We haven't checked it yet, but the address makes sense. And then we compare it to a known master address file. Think of it as we have every address in the world, if it's available, and you give us a very poorly formatted address in a specific country. We do our best to make sense of the address you gave us and then find a match to the address that you intended. And once we find that, we will return the standardized or validated address to you. Different addresses have different countries. So if you need to have a standardized address format, that's what we provide. So let's see, did I hit it all? What is international address validation? And international is just address validation for all the countries. So we started with US, we've expanded outward. We've encountered numerous challenges along the way. Let's look at some of those. I'll come back to that. Some of the challenges that we've run into, and these are challenges that are just inherent in this space, so working with international address data. So the results can only be as good as the underlying data. Oh, a lot of our customers think that we have a known address list for every country in Nigeria or in Uzbekistan. Well, we don't. We have as much information as possible. Our data comes from sources that are not just the local postal authority. They come from other sources as well. In some countries, the postal authority is not the best source of address data. That's kind of strange, but that's the truth. So we get our data from an aggregation of a number of different data sources that have been vetted and have proven over time to be reliable for that country and sometimes even for a region. Our data is updated quarterly. International data is updated quarterly. And sometimes data sources that were good last quarter have been deemed to not be good, and so we don't use them for the next quarter. Another limitation, let me hit that a little bit more. Internationally, some countries only have address data, or we are only able to acquire address data down to the thoroughfare level. Thoroughfare is our term for street. So even though you live in Uzbekistan and your house number or your full address is 100 Main Street, I'm using the main just because we don't have the data for the individual house numbers, but we do have the data for the street and the city and the province and the region and the postal code. So we can confirm as much as is possible. It won't always be everything. And we have a list on our site. We call it countries or supported countries. Here is the link. Oh, it's not a link to highlight. But we have a list of both the address quality for that country as well as the geocode quality. Many times it's the same, but sometimes the geocode is not quite as good as the address data. We also support transliteration. I hinted on that a little bit before. Transliteration means that you supply an input address in Japan and in a native script, and we are able to make sense of that and output the address in a Latin character set. In Russia, for example, the Russian, here I am trying to understand Russian, the spelling for Moscow in Russia looks like Mockba using their characters. The Latinized version of that is Moscow. we translate or transliterate that for you if you want that done. But not all countries and not all languages are supported. There are about 15 countries or 15 languages that we handle right now: Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Greek, Hebrew, just to name a few. So those are some of the limitations, primarily with data. Oh, I said results can only be as good as the underlying data. Also, this is where it comes to you. You're going to give us addresses and want us to try and clean them up for you or match them. Sometimes, if you can change the way that you're submitting the information to us, you'll get a better result. There's an old saying with computers: garbage in, garbage out. Well, Smarty has the job of trying to not give garbage out, even if garbage came in. But just be aware that sometimes the garbage can be too much that we can't make sense of it. That could be things like having way too many additional words or additional sentences on the address line. So we can help you with that. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Any questions so far? I will move forward unless I see any, and that's just fine. The questions can come at any time.
Sure. No, I think we're good. We can move on forward.
Okay, sounds good. How to use address validation tools. Excuse me. So at its lowest level, Smarty provides an address validation engine, and we've made it accessible. And all of the tools that we provide, are using the same API that we have. So there's nothing extra that you would have access to if you were an employee here. So we all use the same tool. We eat our own dog food, as they say. So Smarty Streets provides an easily accessible cloud service. I'm reading it right off my screen. That can be integrated into just about any application or website. Because it's a cloud service, you are simply making a call to our API, and the call is as simple as a URL, an HTTP request that has some address information appended into that query string or into the URL. Our API takes that, cleans it up, and responds back with a text string, a JSON response. So very, very easy to implement. Whether your address is whether you have an address coming to us in real time, whether you want to verify the address in real time, or whether you want to do it after the fact, it doesn't make any difference with our API. Autocomplete, that's an interesting one. Some of our clients really love autocomplete. Autocomplete is a type ahead tool. So as you're typing, you can start getting valid address suggestions from Smarty. Many of our clients love that because their customers can get feedback as they're typing. So if they start typing an address, they see suggestions. As soon as they misspell the street, the suggestions go away. Oh, that's supposed to be an indication to the customer to back up and check the spelling. They do that, then they select the address they wanted, and they're good to go. Autocomplete means that you get the best possible address at the best possible moment. Anytime you can check the address while a customer is putting it in, that is the absolute best time to do it. The second best time is after they put it in and hit submit on the form. You can send that whole address to our service, and we'll check it and give you the results. They'll be instant. They come back within usually within a quarter of a second, so 250 milliseconds. You can then respond to your customer and let them know, hey, did you mean this address? Or looks like we couldn't find a match to your address. Do you want to check it? Things like that. So the best way to do it is when you've got customers. You can also do totally after the fact address validation. A lot of our customers, especially when they first come on board, they have a large list of addresses that they've been accumulating over the years. And if they're shipping things, they'd like to make sure that address is good. If they're trying to deduplicate, they'd like to have a standardized version of the address. That's what our system can do. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's all using the same API, except for the autocomplete. That's a separate one. Whether you're doing addresses one at a time from your website, or if you're doing a batch of them, 10 million addresses or 100 million addresses, it uses the same API. It just depends on how many addresses you want to send to us and how often and how frequently. So we can handle either way. Let's jump ahead. See, that was how to use it. Cool. How can you use different address validation tools? Good, I've already hit part of this. As you type is the autocomplete. After entry is our address validation. You might also hear me refer to it as our street API. And then bulk, again, which is the same API, that's the street API. And then single line address. Oh, sorry, this is just two ways to enter it, single line or multi-line. I'm going to work backwards here. We call this freeform. Sorry, you'll hear us call this freeform or component mode. Freeform means you are submitting the whole thing, the whole address in one line. That one is great. That one's great for interface design because you don't have to take up as much space with the multiple fields. Looks like we have a question. Maybe.
There is a hand raised, but I'll need you to type your thought into the Q&A or into the chat. So we'll keep going until that comes in.
Okay, awesome, Andrew. Thank you. So the freeform address, if you have an address like, let's say the whole address line says Jeffrey Duncan, that's my name, Jeffrey Duncan, 100 Main Street, New York, 90210, USA, and then a phone number. If your customer gives you that and doesn't give you any additional information, it's hard to make sense of that. And if it's in Japanese or kanji characters, it's even more difficult to make sense of that. Where does the name start and stop? Company name, McDonald's, or some other company name? Our system can handle that. That is what the single line address input is for. Or again, we call it freeform or single line. When you have the additional components, when you know what the house number and the street type are, and when you know the locale, the city and the state and the postal code, if you submit those into the separate components, or in this case, multi-line address input, sometimes that can even help. Sometimes in this case, the cleaner the data, the better the results. So that's the difference between freeform or single line and multi-line. Let me go back a little bit to autocomplete. Andrew, did you have something?
Yes. So the question is, what threshold or API response attributes can be used for automatic adoption of a corrected address? And is there a chance of data loss in an automatic adoption of an API response, or is a human evaluation always needed to accept an address correction? Cool.
That is a multifaceted question. That's awesome. I'll go backwards. Is a human always required on that? Again, if you're interacting with a customer, or if you have your customer interacting with your website and you have a response from Smarty that has two versions of the address, right? That is an excellent time to prompt the customer, hey, which one of these did you mean? An example would be, again, I'm going to use addresses in the US as an example because I'm in the US. If you input 100 or 1 Rosedale, Baltimore, Maryland, our API will respond and say there's a 1 North Rosedale and a 1 South Rosedale in Baltimore, Maryland. There's nothing that the computer can do to determine which of these is better because there was no pre-directional north or south on the input. If you make an automatic decision on that saying take the first one, that doesn't mean it's better. It's just the first one. So I would recommend that if you get an ambiguous response, meaning if there's more than one candidate that comes back, if you have the option, present that to your client. Ask them in real time which one they meant. If you don't have that option, then introduce another step in your process where you do have some human eyes looking at it. And if that's not an option, to do pretty close to input time, then flag that for review later. So Definitely, if the response is ambiguous, and we indicate that in two ways, it'll say ambiguous for the response type, and also there will be more than one candidate that comes back. So both of those indicate that it's ambiguous, and you might want to do something else with it. We also haven't. I said response type. Let me clarify. It's not response type. It's verification status.
Okay. Another piece of clarification, does the autocomplete require a pattern to suggest addresses like street number plus street name plus city?
The autocomplete starts returning address suggestions long before the city comes in. The minimum requirement for autocomplete is that there be a country. That has to be there or it won't start at all. Country, and then as soon as you start typing, it will start returning suggestions. In Germany, if you type in 25, you will start getting suggestions based on that 25. Now, those suggestions might include house number. That 25 might be part of a postal code. It may even be part of a street name if there is a 25 street name.
Okay, great. That answers those questions. Thank you.
Okay, let me add a little bit more to that first question. Is there a way to know for sure what the response should be, or how to interpret the address response? We return a field called verification precision. The precision is going to be delivery point, which is like a house number, premise, which means it's on the right range, or it's within the range for that street. Another verification precision is the thoroughfare. Then you have locality and administrative area. Each of those indicates that we were able to find a match to a different level. If we indicate that the verification precision, address precision is thoroughfare, that means for that input address, the best match that we could come up with was to the street level or thoroughfare. If the output says delivery point or premise, that means that we were able to find a match to that a match within the master address file at the delivery point level, meaning the apartment or the house number. So if I were shipping very expensive shoes to Vietnam, I would not want to accept an address match that is only at the locality level, which means city. I would require a better match than that. And whether it's putting it automatically through the Smarty process and running it multiple times if you need to get the right match, after asking the customer to submit it again, that's what I would do. If I'm just doing some data analysis, I wouldn't necessarily need a delivery point on that. Cool. Thanks for the question. Any other questions, please ask. So I hit on bulk a little bit. Bulk address validation, it's the same thing as the after entry here. It's just sending more at one time. Our API can handle millions of addresses per second. Not a problem. You can send as many as you need. So people that are our clients who are taking care of a backlog, which usually they do when they start with our service, they take care of their backlog and then they take care of addresses as they come in. That's great. That's the bulk way to use it after entry. And then as you type is the autocomplete. I think we hit that. I'm going to move to my next topic. What it takes to get started and implement. Cool. Well, first thing to let you know is that Smarty is very easy to integrate with. We have clients that have had it up and running in a couple hours. We have clients that have taken months. And the difference between those two clients is whether they were willing to reach out to us. That is the only difference. Our clients that have taken advantage of our support team, whether it's by phone or chat or email, they get their answers right away, not a ticket in a queue that takes a long time, but they get an answer right away and they're ready, they're able to get going. So please, I'm doing this backwards again, reach out to us if you need any help. Our support team answers usually within 2 rings. So reach out to us. How to get started? The first thing that I would do is go to our homepage and just type in one address at a time and see how it's doing for your needs. If you happen to need apartment level precision or house number level precision, in a country where we don't support it, that will let you know, hey, Smarty Streets does have exactly what I need. I can move forward with this. Oh, Smarty Streets doesn't. I said Smarty Streets. Smarty doesn't have the data for this country. Oh, and neither does Google or anyone else. Okay, Smarty is a good match for us, and the data that we want is just not available. Cool. So try it out that way. Try a list right on our website. You can copy and paste up to 2,500 international addresses right on the website. If you don't have an account, you can do 10 at a time. That's fine. Try it out. Try it. So test it right on the website. It works very well. Once you do decide that Smarty is going to meet your needs, we have a number of libraries available for you, SDKs in lots of different programming languages, for both mobile as well as server-based. So mobile meaning Android or iOS, server-based meaning PHP, Go, a number of different languages. We have SDKs or libraries already created for you, so you can jump right in on those. At its lowest level, I mentioned that you're sending an HTTP GET request through a secure connection to the Smarty Streets API, and the response that you'll get back will include an HTTP status code always, so you know that the response or that the request got to us and we processed it, and it will have a JSON response. That's it. It always comes back in JSON for you, so you don't have to figure out XML or anything else. So that's how you'll call our service. The documentation on our website is updated frequently. The support team has direct access to that. So as they get a call from you, for one of our clients saying, hey, there's a typo in the documentation, we fix it right away. So the documentation is very clear and is accurate. You're not going to find stuff on there that is stale and out of date, so you can totally rely on the documentation that we have. And again, I can't stress enough, please reach out to us. Our support team will answer within 2 rings, unless we're out playing golf or something. Usually they'll get it within 2 rings. And if they can't answer your question, which usually they can, they have access to run to the next room and grab one of our developers, grab one of the operations team, or someone that can help answer the question. So we are here at your disposal. Please, please, please reach out. You will have a much better experience with Smarty if you reach out. That's all I had planned for this. If there's any additional questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey. This is very good. We have several questions. We also have several people saying shout out to the support team, that they've used the support team before, and they are indeed wizards. They are indeed fantastic. Okay, a question here. If an address that contains suite information, is it possible that that data could be lost when adopting the address if the response does not contain that suite information? For example, the address was found, but the suite number isn't in the response. Do we keep the suite number or toss it?
Yes and no. Right now, we try to keep if we can't find a match that includes that suite number, our goal, what we try to do is to still return that suite number because it was important to you. It was useful, maybe not for finding a match, but definitely for delivery or finding the address. So if there's a case where we don't, let us know and we will change our logic to include that.
And you would let us know by reaching out to our support team, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
It's very complicated, lots of countries, but those changes, if we can identify that there is a secondary or an apartment information in the input, we keep it. We give it back to you. Okay.
Excellent. Before I read another question, would you mind going forward one more slide? I believe you've got one more for me. If you do not already have international address validation from Smarty and you want to try it for free, you can do so. Just go to smarty.com/signup. You can pick from several different of our tools, whether it's US geocoding or international address validation. You can get free lookups to try it out and see what it's like by going to smarty.com/signup. Okay, so another question, is autocomplete supported in every country that is supported for address verification?
It is not necessarily at the same detail level, but it is still supported. For the most part, the detail level is the same, but there are a few countries, I can't name them right now because I don't have them off the top of my head, where the autocomplete data set that we have is not quite as complete as the address data set. But yes, we have autocomplete data for all countries.
Excellent. All right. Well, that is the last question. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for your time. And thanks everybody for joining us. Webinars are more fun with more people. So thank you for joining and being a part of this today. Like I said, I'll send out a recording later in the day. And if you'd like to try this international address validation, do so for free at smarty.com/signup. We'll see you guys next time.